Hi everybody and welcome back to my channel. It's Russell with Ink and Paper Blog. How are you doing today? I hope you are doing very, very well. I am back from New York City. I have been gone for 6 days about. I went to Book Expo America. I have tons to share with you, so look for videos to come. But I got in late last night and I am really, really happy to be home. I missed my family. My family missed me, as you can see by little Blanche not leaving my lap right now. So she's in the video, but not in the picture, but she may pop up. And I am coming to wrap up my May reading month because I actually had a really good May reading month. And I have a lot of books to tell you about. So get out your paper, get out your pen, get out your Goodreads, because if you haven't read these, I think you're going to want to, I promise. So let's start with the first book I read, and that is The End of Eddy by Edouard Louis. This is translated from the French by Michael Lucy, who is actually a professor local to me at the University of Berkeley. This was recommended to me by Noah over at Green Apple Books, and I am so glad he did, because this is a very touching, emotional tale about a young boy born into a very working class city in France who struggles with the fact that he is just naturally very effeminate, and what that means for his family, for his school life, for his siblings, and just growing up in this type of world where everyone in this town works in this factory. That's where you wind up. Most people leave school early to start working there. Money is always tight and struggling. Eddy, who is the main character, and there are clearly some autobiographical parts to this novel. Eddy, who is the main character, his father is injured, is unable to work, so money is very, very tight, and he goes to school where he is very, very much bullied for who he is, and his parents clearly love him and they want to protect him, but they don't know exactly how to deal with just who he is as a person. It is one of those instances where you want to protect your child, and it is very well told. There is some trigger warnings for abuse and bullying, and some awful things do happen to Eddy. I will also do a minor trigger warning for some animal violence in the very, very beginning of the book. It's very fast, but I just want to put that out there, just if that is a super trigger for you and you can't get past it, this may not be the book for you. But it kind of sets a tone for what type of community we live in, or Eddy lives in. The translation is beautiful, the story is compelling, and you really feel for this character throughout his growing up, trying to decide who he wants to be. And I know that Edouard Louis has done very well for himself. He was very young when he published this novel, and it is done extremely well. So if you're looking for a true, honest account of a story about a young gay person in a working class neighborhood, I highly recommend The End of Eddy by Edouard Louis. Now, the next book I'm going to recommend, I'm definitely telling you all to put on your summer reading list. It is a perfect by the pool read. It is a perfect beach read, and that is The Reluctant Fortune Teller by Keziah Frost. And Keziah sent me a copy of her book, and I am so glad she did, because it has so many of my triggers, everything I love about a book. So this is the story of Norbert Zelinka. Now, Norbert is a single, widowed, older gentleman who lives in a community where he's in an art class and he's struggling with money. Money and finances are very tight. Norbert is a very giving person, and in being a giving person has been taken advantage of greatly. And so now that he's older, money has become a problem. And in walk, you guys are going to just know this is so me, 3 older women led by Carlotta. And Carlotta is kind of like the social leader of this group of women who, they have projects and they do things, and she sort of creates things to keep her friend group entertained. And they have decided to make Norbert their project, and what their thought is they're going to turn Norbert into a fortune teller using playing cards. And they go to his house, and it turns out, so Norbert was very close to his older aunt, and she has left him this little teacup chihuahua, Ivy, I believe, and she is adorable. her own character throughout the book. Also, his wife passed away many, many years ago, but she has a lasting presence in Norbert's life. And basically, this is the story of Norbert struggling with being good at reading people and what he does with sort of this talent. Also, how sometimes that doesn't work out, and how sometimes people don't like to be told the truth. And it's just about people and friendships, and it is charming and adorable, and it has just these cute older women like Birdie, who I just adored her. She's sort of that earthy, whimsical type of older woman who just has a touching spirit. And it's just about how people come together and help each other. And you guys, it's just charming. I highly, highly recommend it. If you are looking for just something that is going to make you smile, it does have its ups and downs. But, you know, as far as having some intenseness in it, but in, you know, throughout, you're just going to just love Norbert. You're going to love the ladies, and you're really just going to love The Reluctant Fortune Teller by Keziah Frost. Highly, highly recommend. Thank you very much to both Keziah and Park Row Books for sending me a copy of your novel. Okay, the next book that I am going to tell you about is the first in a duology by Tor, and this is Ji Yang's The Black Tides of Heaven. This book is all sorts of stuff. I don't even know really how to explain it, but this is a fantasy world, and I'll just say it's fantastic. And it is a fun story about a world where we have two twin siblings who, in this world, they are gender non-specific until they choose their gender at a certain age, and then they become either male or female, which is really interesting. But what this story is about, how do you explain it? This is about the fact that these two protagonists are the children of sort of the person who is in charge of this entire land. And there's animosity about the ruling class versus the working class, and one of the children develops the power to be a prophet and see the future, and the other one doesn't. And there's stuff that goes on, and they wind up getting separated, but they're always together, and one joins the rebellion, and one is clearly a cog and an important piece of how the ruling class keeps everybody in line. The story is just really well told. It's really hard to tell you too much because I don't want to give away anything, because the plot itself and the plotting is so well timed. I really enjoyed a lot of this book, and I highly recommend it. There's a second one that I'm going to probably read this month, and I really enjoyed Ji Yang's The Black Tides of Heaven, and highly recommend it if you're looking for something to escape into. If you liked Binti, if you liked anything by like River Teeth, it kind of has that sort of feel to it for a novella. I really enjoyed it. The next book is even harder to talk about, really. And it actually isn't out in America, but I had to get a copy because I love Han Kang. And this is her novel, The White Book. This is sort of a thought experiment about the color white. And it is at times poetry, at times prose poetry, at times story. It's just beautifully written. It is impossible to tell you what this book is about. But what you will do is you will get lost in Kang's ability to snatch you into an emotional moment, use something that you're familiar with to trigger some sort of response, and then just bring you to sort of this realization or this thought. Yeah, it's so good, you guys. But it's not plotted, it's not linear, it's not going to be a book where you're going to say, this character goes A, B, and C, and then resolves. This book is very much reminds me of like The Argonauts by Maggie Nelson, or The Department of Speculation by Jenny Olaf. If you liked those type of books, I highly recommend The White Book. I got my copy off of Book Depository because I really wanted to read it. I don't know if it's coming in the US anytime soon, but it's definitely worth getting if you guys want to read it. And that is The White Book by Han Kang. Okay. Oh gosh, you guys, so many good books I read this month. And the next one I read was Stray City by Chelsey Johnson. Now, this was recommended to me by Lenny Zumas, who wrote The Red Clocks. So, you know, I adore her, and I adored The Red Clocks, and she said, Russell, read this. It will be a good read. And she was absolutely right, because it has a couple of fantastic things. One, this is Own Voice, a lesbian story about 1990s, 2000s Portland, Oregon. If you guys don't know, Portland is my favorite city in the United States. I love it, and I would live there in a minute. But unfortunately, my husband doesn't like rain. But this is about a young woman who, at the start of the book, she definitely identifies as lesbian and queer, and she's just gotten out of a relationship with a woman that has sort of broken her heart. And it's about self-identity. And what happens is she runs into this man and sort of starts this relationship with him. More in the beginning, it's out of loneliness and for sort of like a desire for attention. But what happens is she does love him, but she realizes inside that she is not in love with him. But things happen, and the story goes forward. I don't think it's a spoiler to say that she winds up getting pregnant, and it's about how all of those pieces come together and her relationship with the world changes as she becomes a mother. Her and the gentleman, their relationship doesn't work out. And it's about what comes next as a mom. What decisions does she make for herself? She's struggling with money. She doesn't know what she's going to do. Her family, she's originally from the Midwest. Her family has disowned her for being a lesbian and being queer. And she struggles with all of this, but she has to make decisions because things have happened in her life. I only have one little tiny thing with the book, and there's a character who has to get married to stay in the country for a green card. I felt that part was a little forced in. It's definitely something that gay and lesbian couples at one time very much dealt with, but it was sort of shoved in the novel, so I didn't feel like it needed to be there, but it didn't take away from anything. I loved every character. I think the main character is charming and real. Just real, like her struggle is really real. And all of her friend group, I just really identified with that core friend group that you have. No matter who you are, we all have that group of 5 or 6 friends that we know we can rely on. And sometimes things happen and you think things are going to go one direction or another. Friends change, but we always wind up being there for each other. Does that work? Portland is beautifully described. You will feel like you are living there. It is just a great, great book. And I will never forget, I think her name is Andrea. Yes. You know how I am with names. I will never forget her tale. I really enjoyed it. And that's Stray City by Chelsey Johnson. Highly recommend. Get this book, you guys. If you're looking for a lesbian-owned voice, this is definitely a book to read. The next book I listened to, is Meaty by Samantha Irby. Now, I don't know how to describe this. This is a collection of essays, and Samantha is fantastic. She's got great energy, great personality. She's honest and brutal and detailed. She suffers from Crohn's disease, I want to say, and she really deals with a lot of stuff with her health and her weight, and she talks about it in grueling detail. But my thing with this book is I could have read these essays. I should have spaced them out because eventually I just got so bogged down in the amount of issues she was having with diarrhea and her stomach and being sick, and she talks about a lot of very personal stuff, very graphically, and it's powerful, but eventually for me it got overwhelming. I enjoyed it. I very much enjoyed it, but I wouldn't recommend reading this as one through because the themes, there's a lot of the same themes in it, and eventually for me it just got to be a little bit over much. But I definitely recommend this maybe being your by the bed book where you read one, go to sleep, and then read one, every couple days or something, with some stuff in between. But she is a very endearing writer, a very personal writer, and I really enjoyed her. And Meaty by Samantha Irby, a collection of essays. So there you go. I'm not going to say much about the next book, Foreign Soil by Maxine Beneba Clark, because this was my book club book pick for this month. This is a collection of short stories by an Australian writer. It's fantastic. That's all I'll say. Read it. I really, I connected most with some stories in the beginning, but all of them are very, very strong. I think the first story is utterly heartbreaking, and you will need to put the book down and walk away. Yeah, no, Foreign Soil, Maxine Beneba Clark. Excellent, excellent book. Check out my book club video if you'd like to hear more thoughts on it. Okay, gosh, I did read a lot this month. The next book I read was So Lucky by Nicola Griffith. Now, Nicola Griffith is best known for her last novel, Hild, that did fairly well, but this is a short little book that she wrote about a woman who is very put together. She runs an HIV/AIDS assistance program. She's the head of it. She's very smart, very sharp. At the beginning of the book, she is going through a divorce from her wife, and her life is changing. And then all of a sudden she gets diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, and her life really changes. This is about how she deals with it. This book is really about identification. There's about the ownership of feeling like people look at you differently once you have to use canes. How it feels to lose your ability to walk. How you have to create your own sense of society. It also has sort of this element where I don't want to say, it's a mystery. I use that word in quotation marks, but there's some people that she knows in her community once she starts developing it, that things start happening to, and she starts to get scared. Is now her new way of life a liability? And yeah, no, this book was excellent. It's very powerfully told, and I highly recommend So Lucky by Nicola Griffith. I think this may be the second favorite book I've read this year so far. There you go. The next book was a book that was sent to me by my friend Chris over at Chris's Bookish Cauldron for my birthday, and that's The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. Now, Becky actually lives in my neck of the woods with her wife, and that is super exciting because I love local authors, you know. I would say if this is a cross between Star Trek and Galaxy Quest. That's how I would describe it. This is the story of a ship called the Wayfarer and the crew. Our main character is fleeing sort of her past and her family's past and the history of her family. And she gets a job on this ship. And this is about all of the people on the ship and their histories, their cultures. Becky Chambers creates and world builds. You know, world building for me is always really tough. But she does it so easily that you're just sort of along for the ride. And she builds many worlds, many cultures, many species, and she just brings you along and you just enjoy meeting these people. There is not a lot of plot. The plot is simply this. A new contract has come down. The Wayfarer builds sort of these warp tunnels between different parts of space. And they have been commissioned to build one between this alien race that has just sort of come into the collective, but is very much known as this very aggressive, very war-driven species. And this is the story of their trip there. All the stops they make, all the people they know, all the people they meet. There's ups, there's love, there's down, there's everything in this book. There's discussions about the different species and how they treat people. There's stuff about sexuality. There's stuff about gender identity. There's so much in it, and it's just a lovely ride. I truly just enjoyed being along. I really liked it. Thank you, Chris, for sending this to me for my birthday. It was a pleasant read. I laughed, I cried a little, and I really loved The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. Then I have two books left. One's a graphic novel, but the last novel I read was When I Hit You by Meena Kandasamy. This is currently shortlisted for the Women's Prize for Fiction. It comes out in America in June. So you guys, if you want to add this to your list, you must certainly. I will say I think both the UK and the US covers are awful, but it's worth picking up if you like a powerful book, but it's dark. This is the story of a woman who is a well-respected writer in her own way, right, who marries a man who isn't who she thought. And he physically abuses her, mentally abuses her, takes over her life once they're married. And basically it's about mental and physical abuse. And it's about the culture that this woman lives in and how they excuse the man and how it's thought poorly of her for her wanting to leave the relationship. There's some very powerful scenes where she's trying to get her parents to understand why she wants to leave, and her parents are trying to tell her ways that she can make the situation better, which is heartbreaking. Big trigger warnings for abuse, big trigger warnings for rape. There is one of the most powerful sections about rape within a marriage that I have ever read in my entire life in this book, but it is harrowing. But you definitely, you guys, if you want a powerful, powerful, poetic, Meena is actually, I think, a poet by trade, and you can definitely tell in her prose. Yeah, it will break your heart, beat you down, and put you back together again. So that's When I Hit You by Meena Kandasamy, and it comes out in America in June and is already out in the UK. And last but not least is a cute little graphic novel where I got to meet T. Franklin, who is the writer, and it's called Bingo Love. Is this not adorable? So this is about the story of two girls who in high school meet each other at bingo, and they fall in love. And they know, well, one of them knows from the minute that she is in love with this woman, this girl, and they want to be together, but society does not let that happen, as you can imagine. They both go separate ways once they are found out, and they both get married, and then years later, in their 50s, they run into each other again, and they decide to have a life together. And it is so charming and so lovely. The writing is very straightforward and simplistic, and it's just a story about people in love, and so I think it's fantastic. So I highly recommend Bingo Love by T. Franklin, and she signed my copy. So this is a very long video because I read a lot and I wanted to tell you guys a lot, but that's wrapping up my May reading. So I will be back in a couple of days with some more videos. I need a TBR. I have all sorts of stuff to do. So I will be talking to you very soon. So as always, if you are a return subscriber, thank you so much. If you are new to my channel, thank you. Subscribe. I really appreciate it. Until next time, happy reading. I'll talk to you later. Bye.